Have you ever regretted doing the morally right thing? I reported a lawyer to the Bar Association for stealing from all his clients. It was the right thing to do, but it kept me unemployed for over a year. A few years later it bit me in the butt when I was assaulted, and during the assault trial that attorney was called to testify that I was a liar and thief. Apparently he told others I was the one stealing money from his clients. The person who assaulted me was found not guilty. Geez, that might be the worst example of no good deed goes unpunished I've ever heard. One time, a man who was walking in front of me dropped his wallet. I quickly picked it up, ran after him, tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Sorry sir, you dropped your wallet." He looked at me apprehensively, slowly took the wallet and turned away. As he did so, he started wiping it on his shirt in disgust and muttered, I would rather he said nothing at all. Should have slapped it out of his hand, or rubbed yourself all over him shouting "N cooties, N cuties." My girlfriend works at a fast food restaurant and she brings me something to eat every once in a while when I pick her up from work. I wasn't very hungry on this particular day, so I decided to give the food to a homeless man at a red light. He takes the food, says I could have made better use of some dang money, but thanks man, and throws the fries on the hood of my car. Frick you, homeless guy. Well, there is a reason he's homeless. Very TLDR version. I extended my medical benefits to my first wife well after our marriage was over, and held off on signing the divorce papers until she had completed treatment. She had no other means to pay for medicine and doctor visits, so I thought it was the right thing to do. My current wife reminds me of this every time I ask her not to buy a new piece of knick-knack bric-a-brac or purse, shoes, etc. I don't know if I regret helping my first wife, or letting my current wife find out. Sounds like current wife doesn't approve of you being a hero to someone. I once went a huge way out of my way to take a wallet that I found back to its rightful owner. I spent ages walking around stores, asking nearby people if they had lost a wallet or heard of one missing. I looked at his driver's license, which contains the address here in the UK. I went to his house, which was quite a way away, and I rang the bell and said I found your wallet in town, and he was like, "Oh, great." He then told me to stay there while he counted the cash to make sure I hadn't stolen any. I hadn't. I wish I had now. I found a wallet once and returned it to the owner, who has hated me ever since. Apparently there was money in it, and I assumed that somebody else found the wallet, took the money, and ditched it before I found it. This was over 10 years ago and she still makes comments about me owing her money. I had a friend in high school who was a cutter, had threatened suicide multiple times, and had notebooks full of really dark poetry, most of which detailed her desire to die. Her boyfriend had confided in me that he was going to break up with her soon, and she had previously said that she would kill herself if he ever left her. So I told the school counselor about the situation, because I thought she might really do it. They called her parents, who put her in therapy, and she never spoke to me again. I still feel like she needed help, and I'm glad she got it, but I also feel like crap about the whole thing and wish I hadn't lost a friend that way. Yes and no. As a young kid back in 1985, I found a lady's purse in a phone box on the road I lived on. No one was around, so I opened it. There was at least £100 in it, which was a fair bit, and a fortune to a 10-year-old. There was, however, a driving license in the purse, and it belonged to an old age pensioner. I will admit I was tempted to keep it, but my parents had taught me to do the right thing. I knew the address but not the person who lived there, so off I went to return the purse. There was no answer at the door, so I just posted it through the letterbox and went home. Never told my parents and just got on with it. About a month or so later, I was riding my bike past the property, came off hard, really bashed myself up badly, blood streaming down my face when the woman who lives in the property came out. Rather than offer assistance to a bleeding, possibly concussed kid, she was an absolute sea-rag, shouting at me to bugger off and stop riding past her house and how it serves me right blah 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 because I destroyed her plants the week before. I'd done no such thing. I'm glad I returned the purse because it was the right thing to do, but by heck, I wish I hadn't. Should have dropped the bomb on her and told what you did. constantly forgiving my aunt's BS and trying to be the bigger person. Though she's constantly her tea, I baked her cookies on my birthday as one of my many peace offerings and took them to her workplace. Later that day she threw a shoe at my head. She's a C and we don't talk anymore. Not me, but an elderly woman tied her dog to a lamppost before going into a corner shop for cigarettes. The dog wasn't properly tied up, the knot came undone and it started to run away. A black guy picked the dog up and carried it back to the lamppost. He just about reached it as the woman came out. She took the dog from him, then threatened to get his arrested as a dog stealing in. I approached and told her what had happened and she refused to believe me, though he seemed somewhat placated in that I had tried. I was in 4th grade, so when I found a $20 bill on the sidewalk in front of the school, I thought I was in the money, but something told me to go turn it in at the office. The secretary took the bill and said if by Friday no one came in asking for $20, it was mine. Come Friday I skipped to the office only to find one of the popular kids watching as his mom laid into the secretary about her son's lunch money being stolen. She handed over the bill as I watched and I saw a smug smile spread on the kid's face. I don't know how he would have known it was there, but I'm still convinced it wasn't his money. Maybe he saw you turn it in. I once gave a homeless man £10 because I had just got a new job and was feeling particularly generous. I saw him about 2 hours later absolutely lathered off cheap lager and he was punching a woman in the face. I once found over $250 under a table at a diner off a motel. I asked the waitress if she knew the person that was there before me. I gave her the money and saw her return it to a man outside later on. He didn't thank me. I once found a wallet with $200 on the side of the road when cycling home. It belonged to a 17-year-old. I found his phone number online, called, and spoke to his parents. He picked up the wallet the next day and was so grateful. He insisted on giving me a reward, but I was just happy to help. On his way out he left $20 on top of my microwave. I have never regretted returning items and money to their rightful owners, even if the people are rude and aren't grateful every time. If you don't make it personal policy to return things despite that risk, one day you'll keep what you find and a kind person will lose something that may be precious to them. With that first instance, I suppose that the waitress wouldn't inform the man of the third party involved, that is, Brofester, and presumably the man thanked her, assuming she found it herself, as opposed to you. We do good deeds not for the thanks, rather because it is just the right thing to do. TLDR. The moral high ground is nice, but it is not edible. I found and returned a wallet with about $200 in it. I was in college, had lost my job and had no money. I did not have enough money for food by the end of that week. I know it's late and not of much consequence, but the person you returned it to could have been in the same position. If I was living dollar to dollar and somehow lost my wallet with everything I had to my name, nothing would make me happier than to get it back. Busy saying that you never know, and it's always good to do the right thing. When I was in 3rd grade I found $9 on the ground, so I turned it into my teacher. Because honesty was one of the core characters at my school, teachers were supposed to report such actions to the office so the child's deed would be recognized in the school announcements the next day. I was never recognized. B clearly pocketed the $9. I once thought I was helping a neighbor out only to realize I wasn't. I lived in a pretty trashy apartment complex in my early 20s. The couple that lived below me were loud and obnoxious. There were people knocking loudly on their door at all hours. One night the guy comes home drunk and is pounding on the door screaming at his girlfriend to unlock it and let him in. He is very angry and wakes up half the complex with his pounding and screaming. Someone called the police. He tells them he is not angry and that she is just asleep. Sure enough, they call inside and the sound of the phone wakes her up, but she slept through the pounding. She is fine and lets him in and all is well. A week later he is at it again. This time I offer to let him use my phone and sure enough, he calls her and she wakes up. When asked why he doesn't just get his own key, he says he can't afford it, but he can afford going out and getting drunk. A few weeks later it happens again. By now I am annoyed by this. The next day I take him down the street to a hardware store and pay the $5 to get him a key made. A week later he comes home drunk and pee off. This time he has a key so there is no pounding on the door and screaming. Instead he just lets himself in and proceeds to beat the heck out of his girlfriend. It seems this time they had an argument. He left and got drunk, then came home and used the key I bought him to go inside and attack her. Had I not gotten him that key, he would have been forced to use someone else's phone to call her, and she could have chosen not to let him in, or at least been awake and maybe able to defend herself. Gave evidence to police about an assault that happened. Within 1 week I had someone outside my house telling me not to give evidence. If you are British, apparently they give the names of the witnesses to the defendants. God knows why. So the defendant lawyers can examine your past to repudiate your credibility. Interfering with a witness is a serious offense though, and I hope he reported it straight away. Walking back from a baseball game in Boston, in the tunnel to the T, kid ahead of me pulls his hand out of his pocket. $20 bill plops on the ground. He keeps walking. I pick it up, follow him, hand it to him and tell him he dropped it. Oh, okay. Even his father didn't tell him to thank me, so I guess I blame the father more than the kid. It's his job to make sure his son isn't an unappreciative little crap. I went out with my friends one night and we saw this girl who had her car stuck in grass mud. It was raining a lot that night. Without hesitation I told my friend to stop his car so that we could go help her. As we were pushing the car, the wheels gained traction and I got covered from head to toe in mud. I have to give huge props to my friend who had just purchased a new car with leather seats and did not be for 1 second about me being full of mud. He did not even ask me to help him clean it the next day. When driving, no one else around here gives a flying frick about the rules of the road. I only obey them because I hate unpredictable traffic, and driving in the right lane 5 miles per hour over the limit everywhere ends up being less stressful. That's how the roads are in my area at night. No one gives a frick. There's this long street that most people tend to overspeed in. At night, you can hear screeching tires, revving engines, street racing, a couple crashes, and the cops coming in to bust them. Crap, I've been doing morally right things for most of my life. All it ever got me is a bunch of crappy friends who used me. I was very naive. In some ways I still am today, but I have grown up and now I keep everyone at distance. I still do things that are morally right, and will continue to do so, but I no longer expect anything good from humanity. I merely do it for self-satisfaction. I am on the same path that you are. Future self, I am afraid on what we will become. On the other side of this scale, when I was a little kid, 5-6 years old, I was with my mom in a crowded mall, and I picked the pocket of a guy in front of me. Then I tugged on his sleeve and returned the wallet to him, saying he had dropped it. He gave me $5 to thank me, so I did it again 5 minutes later. This guy gave me $2. When I did it the third time, my mom realized I wasn't finding these wallets and wouldn't let me accept money from the guy. I helped someone move out on her own because her parents were addicts and physically psychologically abusive. I lent her $800 which she used to get an apartment at age 16. Did she ever pay me back? Of course not. She could barely earn enough to make rent and buy bus fare. I was butthurt for freaking years about that $800. It's only money and I have gotten over the butthurt. She's doing fine now. I learned the hard way to never lend money I expect back. It's hard when you could lend someone money and everything could go well, but if they miss a payment it will hurt you. When I arrived at Tel Aviv airport, the cashier at the currency exchange put my transaction through as sterling instead of euros, giving me a much larger amount of money than I should have got. I was afraid he would get in trouble, so I pointed out the mistake and have the money back and got the correct amount. He was a rude butthole and I needed the money. I should have kept my mouth shut. I think I may have gotten the same guy when I went to Israel this summer. He was a complete dong and tried to shortchange me. I did, and I still regret it a year later. There is this girl. All good stories start that way, right? One of those situations where we became best friends overnight. I started to fall for her, and instead of falling into the friend zone, I did something about it and told her how I felt. Turns out she felt the same way, but was already in a relationship. Fast forward a few weeks. We are at a party. Ever since getting to know me, this girl and her boyfriend have apparently hit a rough patch, and he said some particularly hurtful things that night. As a result, it ended up being just me and her later into the night. Now, having known this girl for quite some time, I know that she can handle her alcohol fairly well. She had maybe 1 or 2 beers and was at most tipsy. I was sober as I was the DD for the night after her boyfriend left. She tries calling him to try and patch things over, but he repeatedly blocks her calls. She starts crying. I do my best to comfort her, because I honestly do care about her, but I also make a point to avoid trying anything, as I know I am in a precarious situation. Arm around the shoulder, telling her it will be better in the morning, that sort of thing. She seems to calm down a little bit, so I turn to look at her and ask if she is ready to go home. She just looks at me, eyes still gleaming from recent tears, closes her eyelids, leans in, and kisses me. I give in for 2, maybe 3 seconds. She starts moving her hand towards the zipper to my jeans. Reality sets in. I pull away and brush her hand aside. I mutter awkwardly, I think you may be a little drunk. We should probably go home now. Silent for the car ride home. I see her the next day. I start off with so about last night. She quickly brushes it aside with an oh man I got wasted last night. Can't remember a thing but I can see the pain in her eyes. 1 year later, she is still with the guy. We are still best friends. I still love her. For what it's worth, it was worth the read, and if you'd scored her like you wanted to, she probably wouldn't be with that guy and it could have easily ended your friendship. Sucks though. I wrote about this in another thread, but can't find it. Here goes. My best friend and I were practically inseparable in my freshman year of high school. She's severe body issues whose symptoms began to surface in a bad way our sophomore year. She gradually ate less and less, and finally began purging what she was eating. I was scared for her. I took her to the school guidance counselor with me, and they put her in some kind of rehab clinic for about a month. When she came back, she was overweight and no longer spoke to me. Apparently, the clinic told her I was a bad friend. What? She turned all our mutual friends against me with made up stories making me out to be a crazy bad guy and called me a B. She went after the guy she knew I'd been in love with for most of our friendship, went to prom with him, and eventually dated him for some months. A couple years later she apologized, but things were never the same. Still aren't. I sat an exam alone due to a scheduling error, and the answer key was folded inside the answer booklet. It looked just like a question paper, so the only moderator, who never checked on me once during the whole exam, would have taken it to be a question paper unless he looked really closely. I could easily have folded it and put it into my pocket when I was done with it, as we don't get searched. I hadn't studied for this test, and it was worth 25% of my grade for the year, so I was naturally absolutely crapping myself before it, but I didn't hesitate to raise my hand and hand that mother in. I took the test as God intended, scored at 12% and had to retaken the summer at my own expense and loss of summer earning. So much regret. A few years ago I did an art course at my local college. There was this amazingly attractive young lady also studying, but I kept it strictly friendly as we both had partners. I bumped into her while out in town having a few drinks, and she was wearing the shortest shorts and tightest top I had ever seen. Clearly drunk. She sat herself in my lap and offered to take me home for a filthy night. I declined, all the while trying not to get a raging hard on. I regret not taking her home as my then girlfriend cheated and broke up with me a month later. Couldn't have known that at the time, and not knowing that your girlfriend was cheating yet cheating yourself would make you just as bad as her. My cousin and I were eating at a restaurant, and as a man walks by we notice $20 on the ground. It appears that the man dropped the money on the floor, so we quickly contemplate whether we should give the cash back or keep it and decide to give it back. The man kindly thanks us for finding his lost $20 and we leave the restaurant. When we get home we realize that the $20 fell out of my cousin's wallet and the man just robbed us of the money. Lying bastard. If you walked up to him and said, "Hey, you dropped this $20, he probably really thought he dropped it. I worked at a McDonald's my senior year of high school. I was working full time, maintaining straight A's, and I was president of the speech team. I needed a new dress suit to wear to the competition. By needed I mean the one I usually wore was very damaged. I set aside $100 so I could get something nice that I could wear to my upcoming college interviews. Anyways, 10 minutes before I got off work this woman comes in who was rather trashy looking, to be honest. Obviously into drugs. A mess of kids behind her who were in dirty clothes and hungry. That all aside, she was always polite to us all. She ordered a bunch of food, all from the dollar menu, but after counting out a Ziploc bag of money was about $3 short. I told her not to worry about it and paid the difference from the change I kept in my pocket for those kind of situations. She thanked me profusely, got her food, and sat down. As I clocked out, my boyfriend showed up to drive me to the store so I could buy a suit. It was 11 at night and I had to leave for the event by 4 AM. I pulled out my wallet to make sure I had my money with me before we left. My manager called me to the back for a second and I set my bag on the table, thinking my so saw me do it and would watch it. He didn't though and ran out to the car to get something. Anyways, when I got back I saw my bag sitting there and noticed that my wallet was open when I had closed it. I panic and go through it only to find out that all the money is gone. Luckily I had already bought groceries and paid my bills, but the money $100 for the suit was gone. I looked all over the floor but knew someone had taken it. Then I looked over and saw the woman I had helped pay for food looking away very pointedly. I asked her if she had seen anyone take the money and she just stammered and looked down. She never admitted it, but I know she took the money. I suppose I didn't do any great service to her. It was only $3. Still, I was really struggling financially then, and had picked up overtime hours so I could get something nice, and not have to ask my mom who really couldn't afford it. It was one of the first times I ever really understood that people could be bad even if you were nice to them. I'll never forget her face when she lied to me, knowing full well I knew she took it. I like to think that maybe she used it for something good, like groceries or bills, or clothes for her kids or something. One time I saved a baby boar that I found in the woods. Hen was very little, and had been left by his mama to die. At first, I thought I'd ignore him, but he just seemed so helpless. So I took him home and fed him, and released him into the wild after a few months. Henry paid Medj by returning with alla hans vils venspela farat bukker upella jovla tro Jordan, Farada. I went to a show with a friend and saw a girl from class walking around looking for seats. I started talking to her and figured out that she was there by herself. I asked if she wanted to sit with us and we moved to worse seats so that we could all sit together. I then drove her home because she had taken the train and campus is a few hours away driving and it was after midnight. She has never acknowledged my existence since. I think she's super shy, but it would have been nice for her to say hey outside of class when she sees me. I turned down the offer to take the virginity of a great girl who I really liked. She's really pretty, and was 18 at the time. But I was leaving the country soon after so I couldn't get into a relationship with her, and I liked her enough that I didn't want to hurt her. Never expected that I would still be in constant touch with her 2 years later, and man do I regret saying no to that now. In college there was this really nice girl, not pretty, but not unattractive either, that was interested in me, and I wasn't remotely interested in her. Drunkenly at a party I made out with her a bit, but the next day when she tried to make something out of it, I nicely turned her down and tried to not let her on at all after that. But once the dry spell extended longer and longer, I began to rethink my good intentions. I ran into her a few months later, when I was at a really weird place in my life, and I think she was pretty glad to have not hooked up with me, which was a blow to the old self-esteem. She probably just said that to make her feel less crappy about you turning her down. Nope, I don't follow my morals because I expect rewards and or thanks. Even if it bites me in the butt, I will choose what I believe in. There's people that have done some pretty shady things to me in the past, but I generally try to live by karma will get them in the end and don't lower yourself to their level. Sometimes I wish I chokeslammed the M though. When I was a freshman in college, my roommate, who apparently had never had alcohol before, acquired a big jug of nasty, cheap vodka from someone or other. Fast forward a few hours later, he's so plastered that he's yelling at the posters on his wall. I tell him to go to sleep before he hurts himself. He does. I turn the lights out and sit down on my computer. Some more time passes. He rolls out of the bed and onto the ground. A bit later, I start smelling something really bad. Turn on the lights. It turns out he's crap himself while simultaneously vomiting all over himself. I am 18 and have no idea what to do, so I get some other folks to haul him into the bathroom. He isn't conscious and I am afraid he's dying. So I call the ambulance. They get there, along with the campus cops. They take him off and give me a breathalyzer test. I had one drink, but since I was 18, I got a ticket and then put on probation, even though I thought my roommate was dying. Then I had to go through all the student judicial board crap. So, the lesson I learned was that if that was happening again, I should just leave them. Whoa, that's an incredibly dong move. Thankfully at my university, they overlook underage drinking in the cases of someone getting alcohol poisoning. Authorities and campus people always make sure freshmen know that they won't get in legal trouble if they've been drinking and their friend is in need of medical care. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.